Welcome to the part 2 of tutorial series how to create experiment. In this video we explains what to do first in order to start building experiment. Let us begin. Firstly, let us create new experiment. You do it by going to the menu and clicking create new experiment and filling out the information in the following wizard. My experiment name is in this case going to be new VSM experiment, and I'm going to save it in documents TraceLab experiments, but you can select other folder. Other information are optional, like author and the description. This is tutorial experiment, and clicking create. The one thing to remember at the beginning is to add references to so-called packages. As you may notice, at first you don't see any components in the library, and this is because your experiment does not reference any packages. You add reference to packages by going to components library and clicking on this plus that opens the following manager. You add reference to package by selecting which packages you want to reference. In this case we have two packages. One is TraceLab components that consist of many components, as you can see, and the other one are the sample data that we'll use in our experiment. Both packages are coming with the installation of the TraceLab. Once you have done this, you can actually notice that you have more components in the components library. So as you see, initially we only see start and end node. Every user at the beginning may ask, how do I know which components I should add first? As mentioned in the video introduction to TraceLab, the components exchange data via workspace. So typically the first components in your experiment should output some data into that workspace. Usually such components read data from external resources, text file, XML file, database, etc., and writes that data in some format to the workspace. Thus we call these components importers. This is usually the first category of components that you will explore. The importer category is usually categorized by the type that is being imported. Since in our experiments we want to trace from requirements to regulatory codes, which are essentially artifacts, let's see the category of artifacts collection. Secondly, the importers have subcategories from what format they load data. In this case we only see that there is one category from XML, and here we have just two different importers, but eventually the goal is to have importers from different formats, text files, CSV files, from databases, and so on and so on. Let's use Poirot XML format. Note that the tooltip have information where to find sample file to see how to prepare your own data. We add the component to the experiment by drag and dropping into the experiment. The Poirot XML has two different parameters in the configuration. One of them is file to import, that allows us to define which XML is being imported to the workspace. We can select the file from disk, or we can select from packages. In this case we are going to choose one file from the packages from the first experiment tutorial data, and let me choose, for example, source artifact HIPAA goal model, which represent the regulatory codes. Let's click OK, and as you see we reference the file in here. Once done, we can connect the Poirot XML importer to start and end node and execute experiment. In this case we can see in the workspace view that we now have the list of artifacts that correspond to the name of the output as of this one element. If you double click on that element, you can see the data that has been imported with the artifacts ID and their content. You can also optional trim element values, and if I rerun this experiment you will see that the values has been trimmed with those tab spaces. So that concludes the part 2 of the tutorial how to build your experiment.